Alright, so today we are taking a look at interpreting graphs and tables. For your warm-up, I just want you to go ahead and pause the video and try these couple of problems on your own based on this table. So when we look at this, we want to know in which week did Alicia earn the most money. So if we just look at the different weeks and compare the amount that she saved or that she had in her savings, we would say that week 3 she earned the most because we see the most money in her account. And then if we want to find the average amount Alicia earned in 1 week, we would go ahead and add those amounts up. So we'd have 3 plus 5 plus 10 plus 2 plus 5. And then here, like I would do, 5 and 5 would make 10. 3 and 2 would be another 5. So we'd have 10 plus 10, which is 20, plus 5. So 25, and then divided by the 5 weeks that there are. So on average, she earned $5 per week. Basically, what we're going to be looking at is how to interpret information given in a graph or a table, and then to make graphs to solve problems. A lot of what we do in life has to do with our ability to be able to read graphs and tables because they're easy ways to present information because they're well organized. So for example, here we have a table that gives the speeds in miles per hour of 3 different cars at different given times. We want to tell which car corresponds to the situation as we're progressing through. So here we have 105, 110, 115, 120. You can see the different speeds for the different cars, and we're going to read through some situations. So for this first situation, we have Mr. Lee is traveling on the highway and he pulls over to make a call on his cell phone. Then he gets back onto the highway. So if he's pulling over, we want to assume that he is stopped, but then he continues back on the highway. So we'd want to look for a situation where he's driving, and then we see this speed slow down and stop, and then go back up again. So in this case, that would match with him being car 3. Because if you look at this, we can see that he's driving, he slows down, he stopped for a little bit, and then there's driving again. Alright, so for situation 2, we have Mrs. Healy is driving on the freeway between 1 and 120 and encounters no traffic. So we would anticipate seeing similar speeds the whole way. So on this one, if we're looking at car 1 and car 2, we'd want to look at the one with consistent speeds, which would be car 2. In our last situation, at 1 o'clock, Mr. Johns estimates that he will arrive at his destination in approximately 20 minutes. So here we see him driving in car 1, and then we see the speed slow, and then finally a stop. So we assume he reached his destination, so this would be car 1. So now it's your turn. Here is a different table with different speeds for runners, and you want to be able to tell which runner corresponds to the situation. So here Jamie begins the race and soon feels a pain in a muscle. He is unable to complete the race. So hopefully you saw that as they're running, and then the stop. So Jamie would be runner number 2. Now if we look, we have some different graphs to match with our tables. So that first table is like the table we looked at for those first 3 situations. So we want to be able to match a graph to the table. So this first graph we see as time goes, we see slowing and finally stopping. Whereas in the second graph, we see that it remains pretty consistent. So for this first table, this would actually be car number 1, because if you remember, we see that speed pretty consistent but then slowing down. And then for the second one, that one would actually be car 2 because it stays relatively the same speed the entire time. Now it's your turn. I want you to go ahead and pause the video and look at these 3 graphs and then pick which one you think is described by the situation with Jamie. So here, once again, we're looking at Jamie running the race, feeling a pain, and then unable to complete. So if we have our three different graphs comparing runner's speed to time, graph 2 is the one that would make the most sense, because as you look at it, you see that there's a decline in speed and then finally an actual stop because he wasn't able to complete the race. Now here's another situation for you to match. Go ahead and read through the situation and see if you can pick the graph that corresponds to it. Alright, Melissa's building up her speed during the beginning of the race. She maintains her running speed for the remainder of the race. Hopefully here you picked graph 1, because you should see a build in speed and then it levels off because she's maintaining her speed in the race. Alright, once again, go ahead and see if you can figure this situation out for yourself. Anne decides to alternate between running and walking during the race. So if you think about that, we would see her speed constantly varying. So that is why graph 3 is a good match for this situation.